I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen's meeting of Wednesday, July 5th at 7:01 PM. All stand for the pledge. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have any announcements? Does anybody in the audience have any announcements? Nope, the big crowd doesn't have anything. All right, just to acknowledge the chairman, Kevin Moss, is in attendance tonight. First item on our agenda is solely to authorize the town administrator to sign the separation agreement for the fire chief. I did ask the chairman, he has no objections to moving forward with that and signing it. So I would entertain a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the separation agreement with the fire chief.
In light of the fact that the chairman isn't there, I don't feel comfortable with the board of four, given the magnitude of what it is that this board's about to do. I don't think it's necessary or appropriate to authorize the town administrator to do that now.
So it's up to the other remaining membership if they agree with Tim or they want to move forward with it.
I say we move forward as written, given the town administrator authorization to sign.
For the people at home, Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we couldn't paint a little picture as to what it is we are doing here with item number one. I mean,
Well,
we're meeting on a Wednesday under the cloak of darkness, having a discussion and an independent study or investigation on the matter.
well, before we get too deep into that, allow the town administrator just to at least bring us up to speed real quickly as what we're doing here, how we got to this point.
So, Mr. Chairman, in executive session, the Select Board authorized the town administrator to enter into negotiation with the fire chief with the benefit of counsel to arrive at an agreement that would terminate the town's obligations under his employment contract for continued employment. And both sides were represented by counsel, so both the employee and the town, and worked out a series of terms, some of which are, more common than others in terms of standard boilerplate, so non-disparagement clauses, and any number of other waivers of claims, etc. There's financial terms that amount to just a little bit less than 1 year's compensation under the existing salary for the position. It is a practice in municipal employment to recognize that an employment contract creates for the employee a property right, and that one cannot sever that property right without either just cause or resignation or retirement. And after some discussion about the future of the department and where we were headed, and some other recent events, that the chief preferred to retire at this time in his career. He's retirement eligible. And the town was willing to go along with that with a severance provision. So that is the agreement that is in front of you this evening. Chief Vincent has signed it on the advice of his counsel. He's had the opportunity to consult with counsel. This draft agreement's was emailed to the board when?
This came last Tuesday, the 27th?
He signed it the 27th, but when did the draft get circulated to the board?
Oh, I'd have to look back on my dates for that.
It's been floating around for a couple of weeks now. And the basic terms, the basic outlines of the terms were in front of the board when you authorized me to negotiate an executive session.
Does that satisfy your need for an explanation?
I think the key piece to this was omitted. The reason why we're here is there was an independent investigation regarding some behavior from the chief, from his desk in the fire department.
Yeah, and I don't think that's before us tonight to discuss. That was discussed in an executive session, and I think all we're here for tonight is to either authorize or not authorize the town administrator to sign this separation agreement.
That may be true, but in the interest of transparency and letting the townspeople know that there are some people out here that still defend and honor the institution of town meeting, if you want to move forward with it, do it. I'll be glad to vote no.
Okay. So I have a motion on the table. Does anybody care to second it?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? No, it's not open up to the audience for us. This is real, this is a real simple process that we're going through. All we're doing tonight is authorizing the town administrator to or not to sign the agreement.
Can I just do one question to the town administrator?
You open to that?
Just to remind everyone, you cannot discuss certain matters without providing the party with notice, because until this agreement is signed, you're still an employee of the town. So if the question is germane, we're happy to answer it,
Yeah.
as long as it doesn't drag us into a conversation about things that we're not able to discuss, either in open or an executive session without notice to them.
I myself am not comfortable moving into a debate session of going back and forth on this. This is a pretty simple thing, is either we're going to authorize them to sign it or not authorize them to sign it. No disrespect to you, Jake, at all, but I don't think this is the appropriate time to enter into questions back and forth.
It was more of just in regards to the status of the report.
But that has nothing to do with this. Your status report of the department, is that what you?
No,
I don't know what, yeah.
I can correspond with you individually.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I can correspond with
Yep.
Mr. Schultzberg. He has a
And
request.
that's what I was going to suggest to you, that you meet with the town administrator outside of this, and if it's
But we
something.
don't need to speak in code about this. Mr. Schultzberg has made a request for a document that is being handled as a typical access to public records request through the process. And
Yeah,
there are exemptions that I need to explain to Mr. Schultzberg, and I will do so in great detail.
Yep.
But it's not part of this discussion.
Yeah, I'm just maybe I'm being overly cautious. I just don't want to step outside of where I'm supposed to be. We're only here to discuss authorizing the signature. So we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Bonin, no.
Thank you. Second thing on the agenda is the discussion on the door-to-door solicitation. I actually asked to put this on the agenda. Been numerous comments on a social media, local social media page about this subject. I've actually encountered on one of my job sites, somebody coming down the 750 feet off the road to tell me that they were authorized to be there about solar. So this went before the town back in 2018 as a bylaw for the door-to-door solicitation. Let's see. No, that's the wrong, I just sent the wrong page here. And basically, all it's going to do, it's going to require the companies that come into town to actually go to the police station. A lot of them do at this time, but this will require all of them to do that. They do a quick little check to make sure that there's no outstanding warrants or anything on people. But also will create a option for residents to enter into a registry with the town clerk as to if they don't want to have door-to-door solicitation. So when the companies go to the police department, they'll be directed to go to the town clerk to get a list of the people that, or addresses that don't want door-to-door solicitation, so that's why it's on our agenda tonight. I don't know if anybody has any knowledge of the past time that it went through. I don't know if you do, Tim, or anything. I think it's something that we should look into. Some of these people that are going door to door are pretty aggressive. If nobody has any comments on this at this point, I would still continue to put this onto the next agenda, suggest that we put it on the next agenda, so it gives people time to read through this, digest it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Again, not to get too far afield into policy matters from my office, which is not the locus for policy decisions, but we provide the public with a service, and that's not a policy discussion. That's a part of our mission, is to provide people with police protection and the sense of safety in their own home and the integrity of our enforcement efforts. So it was with the active engagement of the administration and the police chief that the last proposal was brought to town meeting, because there was a thought that we do have an issue, namely that people are ignoring efforts to put signs up and, even just very civil conversation. I just really wish you guys wouldn't come to my door. And we've got some folks, not everybody is always 100% able-bodied and all that excited to have strangers at their door. There are some people who live in great fear of that, and there are other people who don't react well to loud sounds or to persistent discussion and other quasi-aggressive things. And so we're trying to protect people from that bad behavior and put solicitors on notice that when they're in Douglas, they need to stop at the police station, they need to register. We need to know where they are so that they are not causing us to run about investigating suspicious persons or harassing activity and taking our resources and putting them out into places where they don't need to be. So it was with some disappointment that this got to the floor of town meeting and got somewhat derailed at the last minute by a concern that could have been accommodated either through an amendment or through the earlier iterations of the process of drafting the proposed bylaw. So we want to take another shot at it. I've interacted twice now on the phone with one of the lead proponents of this, who has a lot of concerns about it. He was a lead proponent the first time and has come back to the process. At the same time, it has to be written in a way, we don't want the police to be constantly dragged into this discussion either. So I think perhaps for the next session of the board, if we have the chief of police present and we're able to give you, even if it's the draft from the last time and how we would change it to accommodate Oktoberfest or whoever else charitable organizations concerns, that might be a good way to move the ball forward on this. But it's not going away. It just gets more and more obnoxious. The fact of the matter is a lot of this is solar panel folks and also folks who want to convince people, especially if they're not well aware of all of the options they have in the market and the value of the energy aggregation effort, to sign up for some strange electric power provider that's maybe offering a great price now and then a huge increase in the future or a huge fee for changing and yada, yada, yada. People get caught up in these things. And our effort, of course, is to try to prevent people from being misled into making difficult or bad decisions. But getting back to solar, the solar penetration rate in Douglas is one of the highest in the Commonwealth. So we have more folks, as a percentage of dwellings, more folks in Douglas have solar than many other communities that would consider themselves greener than us. It's just a fact that solar has been heavily adopted by the Douglas population. So the marketplace is getting smaller and smaller. So every time they come out to solicit, that target group is getting smaller and smaller. So I think you get compensated by the number of doors you knock and the number of sales you make. And, it's getting really persistent now and difficult for folks to deal with. So we certainly want to try to help.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything on that? The next thing on the agenda is the discussion on the Route 16 speed limit review. Back last July in 2022, a resident had put in his concerns and comments about the speed and potentially reducing the speed because of some accidents up in that area. You'll see all that originally in your packet. I did ask the police chief, and he sent it off to DOT. He had not received a response as of yet. He did caution that in some of these situations, the speed could potentially go up instead of down. That a couple accidents that in recent years that happened there were actually a result of a medical incident. They were under the posted speed limit. So because he inquired, I just wanted to get some sort of response and not just ignore his inquiry. He did email into Lisa a month or two ago inquiring about this as to what the status was. So that's where the request came from. So I don't know if you have any input on that, Mr. Administrator, or?
Mr. Chairman, not above and beyond what the chief of police has responded. This has been an issue in the past where people have said, people drive too fast on my road, let's get DOT to look at it. DOT comes back and says it should be higher. That's been an issue off the comment on another road. Clearly, people speed on Main Street. I think we're all well aware of that and see it all the time. I was at Family Convenience having dinner in the form of a soft serve chocolate ice cream cone tonight.
You are on camera.
I am, I know, and I could probably stand to lose a few meals, but the camera accentuates that. But you just need to be a casual observer, and you notice as people go by the highway barn, by the fire station, they're going at a set rate of speed. This is happening everywhere, and it has happened everywhere for a long time, and as you know, our traffic enforcement in town is actually very rigorous. So we spend an ample amount of time pulling cars over, running plates, and giving people citations. The worst accidents in this area, one was a medical episode. We believe one of the drivers passed away before he struck the other car. And the other was a distracted driver. I think you all remember that dramatic footage of that. I think it was a small SUV or a wagon that went into the back of a semi-trailer, and that was a distracted driver situation. Yeah, we'll continue to monitor the situation, look at it, and make sure that the police department does everything it can, and they do by posting. Our traffic trailers are out there asking people to slow down. We have a device out there right now, westbound, just before you get to West Street, that flashes your speed and gets people to slow down. You do see people visibly reduce their speed there.
And just for everybody watching, that's not a prize that you get.
No. It's not a challenge. I think in the past, at Selectman Bonan's request, we did an extensive speed study, and the results were returned back to the board, and we do everything we can to interact with DOT. Clearly, speed will have to be an issue that's monitored carefully as volume on the roadway goes up.
Yep.
And there'll be less and less time to stop a vehicle.
Maybe it would be good to have, because we're going to have the chief come in next meeting anyways, for the door-to-door, to have him comment on that as well, have some input into it.
What section of Main Street is the concern?
Right up just before the common, you know where that little stand is at the Riddlebrook Farm?
Yeah,
Right there.
The old VFW?
Yes. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions or comments for this?
No, I just would commend, excuse me, related to that a little bit, is that speed sign. It's a wonderful solution. It's great to see. I'm glad that Main Street safety is on the forefront of everyone's mind. job, chief.
Because they do zip through Main Street. That's the center. It's great.
I think it's made a market difference. We talked with those neighbors.
Absolutely.
They would say.
Myself included.
Yeah.
We know that putting the little plastic signs out in the middle of the road was not effective.
That was a challenge.
That was a challenge.
That became a
That became like bocce.
Slowed people down.
For a little bit.
Once they ran it over, once it was truly flat, then they just kept going.
Okay, next thing we have up is the meeting minutes. And the last time I asked to pass over this, because I believe Tim may have been absent at that point, but because Tim and I were the only ones in attendance on the April 18th, 2023 meeting minutes, we will need to invoke the rule of necessity, because otherwise they'll never get approved. So I guess Tim and I just look at them, and then we can vote on to accept the minutes, as long as neither one of us have an issue with them. If you don't mind, Tim, take a peek at those. And
As I'm getting ready to make this motion, executive session minutes, we haven't seen or approved or released those in quite some time. I would hope that,
Actually, I inquired with Lisa about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and they're currently in Rich Bowen's hands, reviewing them as to which ones we can, if it's an open investigation or anything like that, obviously, those won't be released, but they are being addressed, and they'll be released at some point.
well, release is one thing, but reviewing them and approving them, retaining them if we have to, but I would,
Oh, you mean, as far as recently having?
well, the longer they go, the
Yep.
harder it is to
Are we-
remember.
Are we behind on
A
them?
little bit, yes.
And the
I would
less
catch
likely
up
it
with
is
those.
to allow the townspeople to see what it is that we are doing in executive session.
Yep.
Guess I'm going to make a motion that we approve both the April 18 and June 6 general meeting minutes as they're presented in our packet.
I'll second that, whereas I was at the meeting, you guys can vote to approve them. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? No. So, April 18th is done. Now we have June 6th. And everybody was here except for Kevin, so I guess we can all review those.
The meeting minutes, so make a motion that we approve the June 6 minutes.
Motion's been made, second.
Do you care about typos? Is that something we care about?
Yes.
Yeah. So, number 5, top of the second page, says TA Wojcik describes the proposed with details of what being delicate is. That should say delegate.
We'll fix that.
Maybe it's a delicate delegate.
Oh, could be that too.
Hopefully, spell check.
Could you just revise your motion as amended, please?
Make a amended motion to include the correction of delegate in the June 6 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing as none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the discussion on the real property acquisition process, you're going to handle that, Mr. Administrator?
Yes. Just want to follow up on this. My report. I wanted to put this part of the conversation in open session so that we begin the foundation of providing the public with information on what the rules are. And when we talk about specific strategies with respect to certain properties in town, that is allowed to be held in executive session until there's a transaction, or they're released because there was no transaction, the project moved on without it. But all interests in real property are dealt with at town meeting, so it requires town meeting support. And I don't know how many people eventually watch the replay, but I'm guessing it's a couple dozen of our most active citizens, and I just wanted to make sure, since this is down in the weeds, that we start to lay the foundation for people to understand what goes on. The state of Massachusetts has a statute called Chapter 30B, which deals with the purchase and sale of goods and services and real property, and it establishes the rules. And the Inspector General's office enforces those rules and makes sure that various municipalities and the different departments of state government follow basic principles, one of which is open and fair competition for bids, and the opportunity to be part of a business transaction with the municipality. And frequently, it happens that all of these advertising requirements and other posting requirements, you may get bids from people you didn't expect. And it ends up being a good deal for a municipality, both in terms of quality and price, to broaden the audience and get more people involved. Real estate's a little bit trickier. There are specific rules in Chapter 30B with regard to the acquisition of real property. When the default rule is that when a town wants to buy a piece of land or an interest in a piece of land outside of some other regulatory framework such as Chapter 61, talking about straight out market purchase, the default is to advertise and to put out there, because the thought process is you don't know who owns a piece of land who might want to sell it and might respond to a municipal advertisement that don't necessarily want to sell it to a developer. You just don't know until you put out an advertisement. So that's what we typically are asked to do. So if we need a 30 or 40 acre campus, that's what we put out there. We're looking for 30, 40 acres of open space with a building envelope of no less than 20 acres to do a certain function. And we would advertise that and get all the results back and do our own assessment on what's in the best interest of the town. And you would use a process not unlike the scoring process you use when you sold a piece of land, right? So you would rate each proposal according to how it fits the interests of the town, and you don't necessarily have to pick the best deal, you just have to pick one that makes the interests of the town. That's the default rule. There is a process for buying a specific piece of property that you've identified that you are in the best interest of the town in advance. So you've gone through a certain amount of analysis, and now you've determined that there is a lot or a set of lots that the town really should own for its own purposes. You can only enter into that voluntary conversation with those landowners if you first, your chief procurement officer, which would be me, writes a memo for the record that identifies the unique characteristics of that piece of property. That is absolutely essential. And simply abutting a piece of town property doesn't make it unique. There has to be some other aspect to it. So I'm trying to think of a good example, but one would be, if you absolutely think that you need to be able to connect to three-phase power, and you've identified, you have one lot that is actually big enough and has access to three-phase power nearby, you would probably identify that lot as being truly unique for the purposes of the town. So you could then enter into a voluntary conversation. Now, there is still an appraisal process. It's not wide open. It's not cha-ching time.
Right.
Where the owner can run up the price and get a handsome payday. It doesn't really work that way.
Fair market value.
It's got to be fair market value. So what two willing parties would be willing to pay in an open market transaction is something that appraisers are trained to do, and so you hire an appraiser, and the price is pretty much what the appraiser comes up with. Are there any questions about how that works? Because we will be going into executive session to talk about more extensive details about different things that are going on in town, but that's one path to town meeting would be to arrive at that uniqueness and then enter into discussions with the owners of those properties. That's all I had on that.
Questions on that? No? Good, Tim?
I think so.
You all set? Rob? Yeah. Your report, Mr. Administrator?
Just a few bullet points on different things that are going on around town. I think this is really good news in a way. It will inconvenience folks for a little while, but it is really good news. We are going to be paving North Street and Gilboa Street from the corner of North and Gilboa all the way to the western edge of the parking lot at the Schuster Mill at the end of July and the beginning of August. So we're going to be able to handle the lion's share of the linear footage of this paving project during this construction season. The determination was made that even though the entire thing could have been done in November, and we would be just out of all of it, so Northeast Main, North, and Gilboa, the thought process is, we could be up for a few challenges on North Street because it's a tough topographical situation there. There's lots of ledge. The roadway's been paved and repaved many times. The granite curbstones need to be reset, so it's a pretty significant project, even if it is a short road. But all the work is done in the street, so all the utility work that's going to be in the area I just mentioned, North Street and that section of Gilboa, is done and won't be dug up again. We will be digging on the rise above the dam/bridge to put in a brand-new sewer pump station. So that's going to be a fairly involved project. Really was supposed to start in June. It's more like July and August now. So we'll have that part of the roadway dug up, and then we'll be marrying the roadway to the bridge over to the cubes at Gilboa at a somewhat later time. So rather than just wait, we have a good construction season, time to pave is when it's hot out, and that's what we want to do. So we'll be providing people with adequate notice in advance of when the road will be closed. Other than North Street, we expect it to be fairly quick work, but we are making it, we're not just going to overlay, we're actually going to reclaim a large portion of Gilboa Street. So if you're on North Street and you take a right onto Gilboa, you'll notice a lot of alligator cracking and a lot of drainage issues there. We will be rectifying those and going deeper with the paving project than we were originally just going to overlay. Now we're going to go all full tilt. So I think that's the most tangible benefit for a lot of people would be a better roadway to drive on, because it is kind of a rumble strip going over North Street right now, and it's
Almost as bad as going down the other 16.
right. So that's what we're up to. I noticed in the April 18th minutes that the Select Board, had designated one of its members to participate in the HAZMIT, so that is the Hazard Mitigation Planning Process, and there would be, a committee would be formed. We're going to kick this in the pants and get started with all of our hazard mitigation and other planning, because it is all either due or overdue. And simply applying a template from MEMA, it doesn't cut it. That is not what we're here to do, and just cookie cutter, ramrod Douglas into, just change every place where it says Sturbridge, change it to Douglas and think you're done. Hazard mitigation plans and all hazards plans are supposed to be tailored to the specific threats that you face as a community. If we've learned anything in the last year, it's that regardless of what you believe about the universe, in total, the fact is stormwater management is becoming increasingly challenged, either because we have more impermeable surfaces or because of the way the rain arrives. You know, getting half an inch of rain in 10 minutes instead of getting 3 inches of rain in 3 days makes a really big difference as to what that's going to mean for you if you're downhill from a big facility. You might get all of that half inch all at once, and you may never see any of the 3 inches. It's just a fact. And as we are looking at paving roads, we need to be thinking about drainage at the same time and being thoughtful about it. Because right now, it's summertime and we don't think about it. The water runs off and it irritates people whose property is damaged. In the winter, that sheets across the road and creates an ice hazard that affects everyone. And it just have to be mindful of all 4 seasons when we think about these plans. So I'll be working with the chief and assistant chief at the fire station and the emergency management effort, and be much more deeply involved in this personally, because we've just got to get all of that put in place. Our plan dictates our eligibility for grants. So if we want to see more FEMA and MEMA grant activity and MVP program here in the state, action grants, we've got to identify projects that we want to do that tie back to the threats we're trying to address. So that effort has to go forward apace. And I forget who was designated.
Kevin,
It was
he was
Kevin.
absent.
He was absent, so he gets the short straw. There's been a lot of traffic. I don't participate in social media for a lot of reasons that are very, very good, I think. Contribute greatly to sanity.
Watching isn't bad, it's commenting is the problem.
You can't not comment if you're watching, so you don't watch. But I think the point's been well taken about a uniquely Douglas institution that needs to be revived, and that's the Memorial Day observance and the Memorial Day parade. Memorial Day is a solemn holiday in our pantheon of national holidays. On Memorial Day, we recognize the ultimate sacrifice made by service members who pass away in the line of duty during a time of conflict. It is not really time to have a big, huge party, at least not from the government entity point of view. If you want to have a cookout, fine, and that's, you remember your relatives that may have served. But for us, as a municipality, it has been a wonderful tradition to go to the different grave sites around town where there are veterans buried, some of whom may have made that sacrifice or who were related to those who did, and play taps and observe a moment of silence to acknowledge the service of those people. I've gone every year I've been able to go when I haven't been called away for something else, and I think it's a wonderful thing. And then to follow that up with a small parade that is entirely about Douglas and the memorials down in this part of town and the small, your bands, your baseball teams. It's a small town event, and it has a lot of character, and it's something that needs to come back. I know there are people that are very willing to get on board, so what we really need to do is form a committee of people that harness all the energy and get it going forward. So we'll look for a way to formalize this in the form of a resolution or a committee charge and get it started. Typically, there's engagement from either the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and we will make every effort to have that communication. But for the rest of us who are still living, we can be as grateful as we need to be, and so we can still have that ceremony. It's only recognized in its breach by not having it, so we're going to make sure we do. Lastly, July is going to be a month of procurement, so almost everything I do in my office for the next 3 weeks is going to be about spending money that was either authorized by town meeting for this fiscal year or ARPA-related projects. And it ends up being very detailed and tedious work, but there will be a lot of postings and a lot of advertisements. We didn't all of a sudden find Blackbeard's treasure. This is money that's already been approved, either by the select board or by town meeting. It's just that now's the time to get those advertisements out the door. Lead times on many of the things that we have already procured are also causing us trouble, right? So we may end up with this weird situation where we procure a bunch of stuff all now, and the things we procured a year ago may start arriving now. So there'll be a lot of activity around buildings and other town facilities. Again, it's not because we stumbled upon a ton of money, it's just the timing. Generators in particular have been very difficult to get, certain sizes and models of generators. So those generator projects that we have contracted for have been taking a long time to complete.
Vehicles are an issue as well.
Vehicles are also an issue. So we are still waiting on the senior bus.
Yeah.
The building commissioner's truck did arrive, but it took 10 months.
It was so long I forgot he had that.
With this, some people would have forgotten he got it. That's pretty much my report for this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have open session for topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. I actually have a request of the board. During our reappointments, I had made a request to be reassigned as an alternate on the zoning board with the thought that I would be able to jump off at any point when they got more members to be on there. But to my surprise, Ms. Freeman had sent me a letter instructing me that I was obligated to service until 2026. So I will make the request to the rest of the board to put me back to a full member for that term versus an alternate. And that's only to assist the board in a better capacity.
I'll make a motion to forward with that, move forward with the
Amendment
Amendment.
to my
full-time.
appointment.
Full appointment.
I'm not opposed to it, but I wonder if that shouldn't be an actual agenda item.
Yep, we can put it on the next one, that's fine.
Right.
Either way, I just want to, hopefully everybody understands what the reason was why I requested it to start with. But if that's what, if I'm going to be there for 3 years, what difference does it make? I might as well just be a member and just continue in that capacity that I have been in the last 10 years. So, Lisa, could you put that on the next meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on
Yes.
number 8, executive session, we can pass over B. We will not need to discuss that tonight. And that is the contract negotiations with dispatchers. We're still
That's going to be put onto a future
finalizing.
one? Yeah.
We've got to get it done the next time.
Yeah. So you can put that on the next one, please? So I noticed this new addition that, and I asked you about this before, but now we put it out there pursuant to Mass General Law 30A, Section 21. Does all that need to be read, or just for executive session, can we just negotiations for town administrator, real property?
I think because the written notice has the legal citation, all that needs to be read is the bolded text.
Okay. Would you be so kind, Tim, as to enter us into the executive session?
Sure. Make a motion that we move into executive session for the purposes of negotiating the town administrator's contract for the interest in real property, Chapter 61, parcel Walnut Street, Lot 2, as well as the Chapter 61 parcel off of Orange Street and Southeast Main Street. And we'll end the night, if we go in order, with an interest in real property, specifically discussing highway facility options. And then to leave executive session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
If you intend to recuse yourself from anything, you should say it now.
And so on the, thank you. On C, I'm going to recuse myself on that, so I would ask that you do that one first, so then I can join the meeting. So we good to go?
Yeah, motion made and seconded.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You need a roll call to go into executive session.
Roll call.
Postma, aye.
Fitzpatrick, aye.
Bone and I.
Smith, aye.